Hello, this is Marilyn. I'm going to present my signature assignment here um, for reviewing caregiving, cultural spiritual healing practices among Black and/or Indigenous women. Start off with my disclaimer. My Prezi presentation is for educational purposes only. And then let's get started. Family caregivers' role and spiritual practices among Black and/or Indigenous women. The caregiver caregiving in general is an expression of love, respect, and commitment towards kin and non-kin. And then in traditional family values, the role of the caregiver is related through spiritual practices, mostly Christian-based care, which is selfless and is acts of kindness, taking on each other's burdens and stressors to heal with the kin and non-kin member. The spiritual practices, we usually seek comfort in healing through a Christian-based organization, such as a Christian-based organization like the church that would have like a prayer list that would go around the congregation, and people would, take the names, or other members would take names off the prayer list and pray for the member that's ill. Sick and shut in is when church members or any other members of the community will actually go in and visit sick members or family members that are shut in, which mean they're confined in their homes, to pray for them and to come visit and offer support. This community will also seek prayer groups outside of organizations, just like in just regular community, kind of like community housing, or either like if there's a community center where they congregate at, they will form prayer groups, or either prayer groups will come to the home and pray for the member, and then they'll have specific prayer groups, one for male, one for female, married couples, single couples. You'll see that as well. And prayer can be accompanied by initiating a prayer, and then everybody will go around the ill member and offer healing touch, basically putting the hands on the person and then healing over them based on whatever faith base they have. Barriers found with seeking medical caregivers. So, in African American community, the families turn always to kin or non-kin before using medical services because of distrust. And then they also have been against racism and discrimination, along with a lack of medical resources within the community, and it's led to frustration, and also in the healthcare system with the appointed healthcare providers not really understanding pretty much the culture, and that has led to frustration as well. The distrust in a healthcare system, daily race-related stressors of life. So most definitely, I mean, we hear it on the news, a lot of different types of groups that came together, like Black Lives Matter, things like that. dealing with just normal, not normal, but stress-related incidences that are happening on the news, impacts the Black and or indigenous community as a whole. And those stressors go back to individual homes across the U.S. You may have experienced loved ones who didn't survive hospital care. For example, I was listening to a commentator about the history of a prominent black hospital in St. Louis, Missouri. The curators and doctors that were actually involved in the, I believe, later part of 1950 to 1960s. The member involved that got the hospital running was a black prominent doctor. He was murdered, and that was big on the community, and the community just kind of fell by the wayside with health care in St. Louis, Missouri. So, of course, going out into other hospitals that weren't based on individuals that need care within that particular culture, they just noticed that the care wasn't as good as comparing to what they used to have, which was a black hospital. Cultural barriers, most definitely the breakdown of communication, is something that is reported within this community. Major experiences of unfair treatment, not being offered medications to help, and low income is pretty high among African American community, are unable to afford a lot of the medications for their illness. Discrimination within the healthcare system. African American physicians have argued that popular misconceptions, inaccuracies, stereotypes, and of the psychology of African Americans may lead to misdiagnosis. Healthcare providers have biases that are as subtle and not giving a range of full care treatment options. Providers' belief that patients are less willing to accept and adhere to certain therapies may deem them incompetent, deviant, and just may not even think they like the care, so they may not even offer it to them. So those are some of the discriminations within the community. Let's look at faith-based healthcare promotions. Getting patients involved with indigenous healers and community faith-based organizations, as this helps bridge the gaps between African American cultural lifestyle. So for sure, if we can take a look at, for instance, my thoughts, or if providers reach out to the community where indigenous healers may be located at, because these healers will not be located in big hospital settings. They actually would be out in the community, and so if we consider bridging that gap, we may be able to have more trust within the community to build that relationship with healthcare providers, because they would have the healers that understand the culture of prayer and spirituality, and then they could report that to their provider. I work for the military population. We do have chaplains of different denominations, so we do have different types of organizations that can be reached for community involvement. For my experience, I'm exclusive. I'm a registered nurse. I work as a lactation consultant. So for me, Black Breastfeeding Week is a really good one, as in the U.S., breastfeeding is the lowest rates for Black and or Indigenous women. So getting them linked into the community, I actually am a part of a lot of social media, so I did not interview anyone because I'm actually a caregiver myself. Most definitely, I've helped to organize things, peer support. This is one that I am hoping to work with to bridge a lot of the gaps between any military members that are African American or Black or Indigenous, towards giving them resources outside of the military into the community. So I do believe that this is something that would work. Most definitely, possibly talking to some of the organizers in the Black Breastfeeding Week, and looking at ways to involve faith-based, to address the spirituality that is within the community is good as well. I've had times where I've been in with the chaplain to provide spiritual healing through prayer with maybe like a mom who has a very sick child in the NICU. So it is very doable for where I work for us to be involved with the community and to be able to serve the spiritual needs of African American and or Black and or Indigenous women that are breastfeeding. And then lastly is my references. And I thank you for listening.